Good morning. Seoul expresses regret over Pyongyang's accusations that South Korea is preparing for unification by absorbing the reclusive state. 3 British teens are stopped by Turkish authorities suspected of crossing to Syria to join the Islamic State terrorist group. Efforts to revitalize the domestic economy include raising the minimum wage in the country. While the government and officials see the need, business leaders and analysts voice concern. And just what is namul? It's a vegetable and a whole lot of nutrients. We'll walk you through the different varieties and see how they're prepped on Korea Today, Monday, March 16th, 2015.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And a good Monday morning. Thank you for joining us on Korea Today. I'm Kim Young alongside Oh Jin-ju and Kim Min-jung.
The whole nation over the weekend enjoyed some beautiful spring-like temperatures, and it was warm enough down in the southern regions that cherry blossoms made their bloom earlier than expected down in Busan.
That's right. We mentioned last week that cherry blossoms will start blossoming towards the end of this month. Well, guess what? Peekaboo. The cherry blossoms snuck up on us and blossomed. We're not complaining, though. They are beautiful. But those of us here in Seoul, we do have to wait a couple more weeks for the cherry blossoms to blossom.
All right, so the organizers of those cherry blossom festivals down in Busan, they're going to have to up things a little bit and push things just a little bit forward so everyone can actually get to the festivities on time at the peak of the whole blossom,
That's right. In the meantime, do enjoy the spring-like conditions we're expecting today. All right, let's now check the stories making headlines on this Monday morning. The South Korean government has expressed regret over North Korea's strong condemnation against the South's Preparatory Committee on Unification following an alleged comment by a senior committee official that Seoul is preparing to unify the two Koreas by absorbing the communist state. Seoul's Unification Ministry said on Sunday the South Korean government believes in peaceful unification on the Korean peninsula and that it should be done through mutual agreement. The statement also stressed that Seoul's unification plans include encouraging Pyongyang to join the international community, not to isolate the communist regime. North Korea had taken issue with a comment reportedly made by a vice chief of the South Korean committee that the government is weighing different scenarios, including one in which unification would occur without Pyongyang's consent. The South Korean official later denied making such comments, saying the remarks were taken out of context.
U.S. and Chinese officials are set to meet with their Korean counterparts with discussions surrounding the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank likely on the table. The Korean government announced Sunday that Vice Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yong and Deputy Minister for Political Affairs Lee Kyung-soo will meet with their visiting counterparts, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell and China's Assistant Foreign Minister Liu Jianchao in separate meetings. The visit comes amid speculation over Washington's move to deploy the THAAD advanced missile defense system in South Korea in the midst of China's protest. Military sources confirmed Sunday that the U.S. has included the missile battery deployment as part of emergency measures to better deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. China's move to set up the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank is seen as a counterbalance to the U.S. and Japan-led Asian Development Bank is also speculated to be on the table. The U.S. has expressed concern over the transparency of the AIIB, while China has stressed the efficiency and transparency of the bank.
Findings show the value of the Korean won has appreciated sharply over the past 2 years. According to a report by Daeshin Securities, the Korean won's value against the U.S. dollar stayed unchanged since June of 2013, while the value of other foreign currencies dropped by more than 21%. In particular, the Korean won gained 29% against the Japanese yen and nearly 27% against the euro. Many analysts say the recent cut in interest rates by the Bank of Korea will likely help weaken the Korean won.
Raising minimum wage is one of the key measures Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan is pushing in an effort to revitalize the domestic economy. Now, yesterday, officials from the government, the presidential office, and the ruling Saenuri party saw eye to eye on the need to hike minimum wage by an appropriate level. However, the nation's business leaders and experts are calling for policy support if there's going to be a wage hike to minimize the burden and losses for companies. Take a look.
At an internet cafe in Seoul, Ko Ju-hyung is a part-time cashier who also takes care of cleanup. On a daily average, he works 5 hours and receives about $700 a month.
As a college student, it's really hard. To pay my college tuition, I have to work 8 hours every day during vacation, like a full-time worker. Plus, if you have to pay for housing, it's even worse.
Concerns are rising that the Korean economy may experience deflation due to slow domestic demand, and the government has announced an increase in minimum wage to boost domestic consumption.
Domestic demand cannot rebound without an appropriate level of salary hikes.
Wage hikes are to revitalize domestic consumption by increasing income. Especially looking at Korea's different income levels, this is to raise the wages of those in the low-income bracket. They tend to spend more than what they earn. So the higher the income, the higher the expenditure. This is part of our efforts to revive domestic consumption.
The minimum wage in Korea has been increasing by 6 to 7% since 2012. Last year, it was increased by 7.1%, and current minimum wage stands at $4.96. Both rival political parties seem to be on the same page regarding the minimum wage increase. The ruling party believes it should be a little over $5, while the main opposition party states it should be at least over $6. On the other hand, businesses are not welcoming the move. They question whether income increase will directly lead to more expenditure.
If the increase in income is spent towards pension savings or paying debt instead of expenditure, the wage hike won't be effective in stimulating domestic consumption.
Let's say a person wants to buy a Big Mac with the minimum wage in different countries. One would have to work for about 28 minutes in Japan, while 36 minutes in the US. Meanwhile, you'd have to work 47 minutes to buy a Big Mac in Korea. The controversy over minimum wage hikes is not only limited to Korea. In the US, the Obama administration is pushing for a bill to increase minimum wage to $10.10. Also, Walmart, the largest US retailer, has announced that it will raise hourly wage to $9 starting next month.
Despite a significant improvement in the economy, the US is heading towards raising the minimum wage, a reflection of the widening income gap and aggravated purchasing power of the lower income class. The purchasing power of the high-income earners is rather set. Ultimately, those with money will spend the same amount as they usually do. Meanwhile, it's the role of the government to make those in the lower income bracket spend, and the US shares the same view.
The positions of small and medium businesses are clear. They've set pay at minimum wage levels, but conclude that with higher wages, they have no choice but to hire less workers.
Minimum wage does not include bonuses and money for board and lodging. If you include such cash payment and bonuses, the actual amount an employee receives will dramatically increase. So raising the minimum wage may trigger a conflict between employees and employers of SMEs and demotivate them.
Though businesses agree to raising minimum wages, they say the increase should be an amount that employers can bear. Especially small businesses, which take up 40% of local employment, say a higher amount of increase are subsequently a higher burden on them.
If the sales revenue rises at the same time, hike in wages would not be a burden. But in reality, with thinking economy, I'm thinking about reducing the number of employees while expanding workload of part-timers.
Then will the minimum wage hike have only a negative influence on employment rates?
It's only some cases that show the decrease in employment rate with a minimum wage hike. In fact, there are numerous research proving that an increase in the minimum wage will raise the income level of low-incomers and part-time workers and ultimately leading a virtuous cycle of boosting domestic consumption. So there will be a positive effect.
While part-time workers welcome raising the minimum wage, they point out there are various other issues to be addressed in advance.
The minimum wage system was not like this. As time passes, there seems to be a tendency for the amount of pay in different sectors to be collectively lowered to the level of minimum wage. From major corporations to micro-enterprises, they set the wage amount to the lowest level. Discussion on raising the minimum wage is an issue that requires discussion on how micro, small, and medium enterprises will provide social support.
We need to have some predictions about whether raising minimum wage will really bring about the results we want. Also, we need to prepare for possible damages that may incur on businesses, classes, and region in the short term.
Minimum wage hike proposed for next year will go through two major reviews. First, the Labor Ministry will request a review by the Minimum Wage Council until the end of this month. And then a final review will be examined before determining the minimum wage outcome at a meeting of Labor, Management and Public Commission in August.
Good morning. It's time to run through the front pages of your newspapers. Now, 3 weeks ago, Korea was blanketed by the worst winter seasonal yellow dust in 5 years, prompting authorities to issue health warnings all across the country against this sandy, chemical-laden wind. Well, unfortunately, an even worse bout of yellow dust is believed to be coming our way this spring. Let's see what this is about on Gyeongyang Shinmun. And the title says, heavier yellow dust to hit Korean peninsula this spring. We are talking about the thick yellow dust, which originates from deserts in southern Mongolia and northern China that flows into the peninsula via a strong northwesterly wind. Now, a team from the Daily went and visited Mongolia's Gobi Desert last week. And this is an image taken just on Saturday where they found yellow and dry plains with sandy winds blowing. Now, usually more than a centimeter of snow is supposed to help control the sandy winds during the winter, but there was almost no snow during this winter. If we go ahead and look at the sub-headlines here, in fact, the winter temperatures were some 10 degrees higher than the seasonal average this year in the meadows of Mongolia, and the Korea Meteorological Administration says although yellow dust will blanket Korea a similar number of times this spring, they will most probably be heavier sessions in intensity. Now, moving on to 중앙일보, we'll take a look at this top headline for a switch of topics, and it's called 2% interest on housing loans. So the BOK's historic low interest rate cut to 1.75% last Thursday is expected to boost Korea's real estate market while at the same time fueling concerns about the possibility of a further increase in household debt, particularly under the government's eased mortgage regulations. If we go into some more detail here, although the drop in loan interest is seen as easing the financial burden on home buyers, concerns are mounting over how the government would handle an increase in household debt, which has recently been seeing a steady growth. Now, after the central bank announced it would cut the benchmark rate, the government announced the launch of a special committee on the management of household debt, which would also strengthen the monitoring of borrowers' qualifications. Now we'll go on to 조선일보 for this headline here, this picture here actually. It's called Gandhi statue unveiled in front of the parliament. Now a bronze statue of Mahatma Gandhi has been unveiled in London's Parliament Square, marking 100 years since Gandhi returned to India from South Africa to begin his struggle for independence. Now Prime Minister David Cameron spoke at this event, calling the statue a magnificent tribute to one of the most towering figures in the history of world politics. And in this picture, he's shaking hands with Gandhi's grandson at the ceremony, who also took part in the event. Now, this paper adds that placing the statue at the heart of what symbolizes London's past colonial era signals England to be reflecting on historical wrongdoings, perhaps, as Parliament Square is a space packed mostly with monuments to men who served the British Empire that Gandhi so vehemently opposed. And today we'll wrap with a look at the Korea Economic Daily for a side article here. And this one is about a Korean company. It's called Korean Company Enters New York Amid Corporate Tax Debate. This is about a local company called CNM Robotics that specializes in researching and developing force insertion technology. And even amidst the huge ongoing controversy over whether or not to hike the corporate tax here in the country, CNM Robotics has been invited to enter into the U.S. market under the agreed terms of having its corporate taxes be exempted for 10 years and its income taxes be exempted for 5 years. And that was a look at our local headlines this Monday, and following are the stock numbers from Friday.
The weather this weekend was absolutely gorgeous, and we're expecting even better conditions today, I
Okay,
believe.
so I think it's safe to say that the gochujang, that last-minute cold, is gone.
It's gone,
And,
we hope.
Spring is here, right? And joining us on this very warm, not warm, but pretty comfortable spring morning is Chun Sung-cho from the Sebitung-dung Islands. Good morning.
Good morning, Sung-cho.
Good morning, guys. I'm reporting live from Hangang Park, where it was full of people all throughout the weekend who are trying to enjoy the beautiful spring weather. The weather was too good to be true after all those brutal cold snaps last week. Temperatures warmed up all around the nation, soaring up to 18.6 degrees Celsius in Pohang, Gyeongsangbuk-do province, which is the warmest it's been this season. And it looks like this trend will continue from now on. Today, mercury levels will climb even into the 20s toward the southern regions. So I'm almost sure it's safe to say that you can put away your winter jackets now. But as much as we enjoy the mercury levels, the atmosphere across the country still remains extremely dry. It's been more than a week now since dry weather advisories have been issued in the majority of the country, with more severe conditions showing up along the east coastal regions and western Gyeongsangbuk-do province. The lack of moisture in the air means even a small spark can quickly turn into a big fire. So at times like this, it's really important that you take extra precautions to avoid starting any accidental fires. And with that, let's take a closer look at today's temperature readings around the nation. Currently, Seoul is at 1.5 degrees Celsius and will top at 16 in the afternoon. The southern regions will shift into full-on spring with temperatures surpassing the 20-degree mark. A nationwide rain is in the forecast on Wednesday, and this is all for me with the weather forecast. Back to you in the studio, Minjang.
Another group of British teenagers headed for Syria in hopes of joining the Islamic State group this time are caught and sent back before stepping foot on IS-held territory. We'll find out more about this story and other global headlines with our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning.
I understand that this trio was arrested by Turkish authorities before they could cross the border into Syria.
Yeah, that's right, Minjung. Unlike the 3 British schoolgirls who had slipped into Syria weeks ago, this group of teens appears to have been stopped by a swift intervention by Turkish authorities who were alerted by UK authorities. Now, they were alerted by UK police after 2 17-year-olds were reported missing from their northwest London homes on Friday. A police spokesman said they were found with another
19-year-old, and that all three were arrested when they arrived back in the UK by counter-terrorism officers late Saturday local time. They're being held in a London police station on suspicion of planning terror attacks. Meanwhile, the joint Iraqi military Shiite militia operation to Crete has stalled since Friday as the joint operation awaits reinforcements while trading sniper fire and defusing booby traps. This as Kurdish Peshmerga fighters report the jihadist militants could be using chlorine as chemical weapons in Iraq's north and west. One town's mayor told Reuters a storage container filled with chlorine and bombs containing chlorine were discovered by the joint Iraqi Shiite forces last week when they entered the town of Al-Alam. On to other news now. Authorities have made an arrest in last week's shooting in Ferguson that had left 2 police officers hit and wounded. St. Louis County Prosecutor Robert McCullough said Jeffrey Williams was charged with 2 counts of first-degree assault, among other charges. He also said the 20-year-old claimed he did not intend to shoot the officers, but at a man with whom he had a dispute. The investigation into the late-night shooting outside the Ferguson Police Department meanwhile continues.
Let's turn to Russia. There's a documentary that's airing on state TV there that's showing the Russian president more aggressive on Crimea and Ukraine.
That's right. President Vladimir Putin and Moscow in general, of course, has consistently denied any involvement in the separatist struggle to split out of Ukraine to join Russia. Well, in this documentary titled The Path to the Motherland, President Putin says he had actually ordered Crimea's annexation weeks before the region had a referendum. He explained the move as Crimea being Russia's historical territory and that the lives of Russians living there were in danger. Now, in Sunday's run of the documentary, the Russian leader said he was ready to put Russia's nuclear weapons on standby during escalating tensions over Crimea and Ukraine, citing the threat against former Moscow-backed leader Viktor Yanukovych. President Putin, meanwhile, has been missing in action since canceling a summit meeting with his Belarusian and Kazakh counterparts last week. The Kremlin has remained silent on rumors that he was ill or out of the country to watch his girlfriend give birth. That is at least according to reports, Minjung.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. Thank you, Eunice.
You bet.
And still to come on Korea today, 3 stories per day, not bedtime stories, but as in levels of a building. A construction company in China built a real sustainable 57-story building in just 19 days. The scoop's coming up on viral feed and amazing feats by athletes like zigzagging in between line cones and pulling off fluid spin perfection. Look at that. Those clips and much more still ahead.
A common source of inspiration for artists is nature and also animals. And our Lee Myun-hee has a look at some artists who use exactly that inspiration to paint pictures and paintings of our furry and sometimes feathery friends. Good morning.
Good morning. Right. So whether it be a household pet or something in the wild, animals tend to be a huge inspiration for artists. So today I rounded up a couple of exhibitions showing here in Seoul that feature some furry animals. Take a look in this next light report.
French contemporary painter André Brasilier often looks to nature for inspiration, decorating his canvas with the beauty of flowers and trees. But there's one image that appears consistently in his works, and that's the majestic horse. His picturesque vision of Mother Nature puts the horse front and center, highlighting the relationship between humans and the animal.
The horse is the most human-like animal. It is very intelligent and understands feelings. This similarity to humans is one of the messages here.
And instead of horses, this artist puts a much smaller animal at the center of his attention. Renowned Korean artist Sung Tae-hoon has brought his famous Fly Roosters exhibition to Seoul after holding it abroad. The series features mystical depictions of the bird, often shown mid-flight, an unusual sight for this animal. But there's also a message behind the image that the artist aims to share.
With the current times, the ordinary person probably feels just like I do. I wish we could all fly away together. That's the picture I paint.
Okay, well, you see a lot of different animals that people choose as inspiration for their works, but why the rooster?
Right, so artist Hung Tae-hoon he has a very unique approach to his work. So he takes almost a traditional Korean, painting element, stylistic approach to his paintings, to contemporary paintings. But in terms of the rooster, he actually said a few years ago he was raising a rooster on his rooftop, and he would chase it once in a while, and it would actually fly around. And that rooster taking flight is what inspired him to name this exhibition as Fly Rooster.
And thus putting a flightless bird up in the air
Right.
and then depicting it in mid-air flight, that's something interesting.
Right.
Okay, let's go back to the first artist. Can you tell us a little bit more information about him?
Right, so Andre Brasilier, he's had exhibitions held around the world. He's an artist in his mid-80s, but he has quite a successful career to show for. And so he also, not only does he take inspiration from horses, but he also paints women, and he also likes to include music into his artwork as well. So if you go to his exhibition, you'll see kind of an assortment of all the different styles he likes to take.
Okay, so would it be considered a little bit of installation art that he's using when he puts music into it, or he just puts music in the background of his exhibitions?
Well, I'll leave that up for you to go find out.
All right, we'll check that out, and thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
All right, still ahead on Korea Today, we're going to be learning about this certain vegetable. Is it a root? Is it a vegetable? It's definitely not a fruit, but it's nutritious, that's for sure. Spring brings in a lot of new blossoms and a lot of delicious edible plants. The vegetables Koreans refer to as namul. Now, what is it exactly, and why do Koreans love it? And a whole bunch of other questions are answered on #CuriousInKorea.
Now, more soldiers serving in frontline army units here in Korea will be able to enjoy reading books during their time off.
That's right. It's all thanks to the new container book cafes that are popping up in these units. We'll find out more with our Seomi Sorang, who joins us. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's part of the Korean Army's wider project aimed at encouraging soldiers to read more books. Now, since the project was launched in October last year, the Army received a lot of books from individuals, publishing houses, and organizations. So a shortage of books wasn't a problem, but at most frontline units such as border area general outposts and those located along seashores, there weren't adequate spaces for the soldiers to read the books in. And that's why these container book cafes were prepared. These cost and space-efficient libraries are only 30 square meters in size, but there's everything you might want. Bookshelves for 1,000 books, heating and AC, and enough tables and chairs for up to 14 soldiers at a time.
Nice and cozy it looks.
Yeah. So the first container book cafe opened earlier this year, I believe?
That's right. The first one opened in January, and 6 more have opened since then. The aim is to have 20 cafes up and running by the end of this month. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry announced its 5-year plan for math education starting this year. Now, the main goal is to shift focus away from trying to score well on extremely hard tests to inspiring curiosity in mathematics so that students are more actively engaged in school classes. Now, changes include allowing the use of calculators in classes so that there's less emphasis on the calculations themselves and more on the critical thinking and the application behind the calculations. And wrapping up with great news for frequent flyers, it is now easier to receive compensation for damaged luggage. Now, certain airlines in Korea have a clause in their baggage handling terms and conditions stating, "We do not assume any liability for damage to or loss of protruding parts of the baggage, such as handles, straps, hooks, or wheels," or something similar to that effect. But from now on, such clauses will be taken out after the Fair Trade Commission ruled them unfair and said that it was industry standard to compensate damage beyond normal wear and tear.
All right, that's, I guess, rather good news for us travelers.
That's right. So before then, they had to go through a lot of hoops to get compensation for legal reasons, and often the airline would say, we already said in the terms and conditions that we have disclaimed any liability, but now it'll be easier.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Sarang.
You're welcome.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 Seoul International Marathon, which kicked off on Sunday morning at the Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul and finished off at the Jamsil Sports Complex. And at the end of a long, grueling race, it was Wilson Erupe who came out on top. Now, the 27-year-old Kenyan who holds the event record from back in 2012 came very close to breaking his own record as he finished with a final time of 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 11 seconds to win his second career Seoul International Marathon. And while he takes home an $80,000 check for his victory, an incredible finish for Korea's Kim Sung-in over on the women's race, as the Korean would finish second overall, coming in at a final time of 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 20 seconds. And while the 2015 Seoul International Marathon took place throughout the streets of Seoul, the 2015 Short Track World Championship took place around the ice tracks in Moscow, Russia. And on Sunday, 2 Koreans claimed the gold medal in the 1,000-meter events. Now, first off, over on the men's side, Park Se-young would finish off the men's 1,000-meter event with a final time of 1 minute 25.115 seconds to claim the top podium spot. But that's not all. Over on the women's 1,000-meter event, it was the teenage sensation Choi Min-jung who would finish with a final time of 1 minute 32.73 seconds to win her first World Championship gold as Korea finishes with 2 gold medals in the event. Now, the 2015 women's golf season has been quite an interesting one, with Koreans winning 4 out of the 5 LPGA events so far, with the other victor being Lydia Ko, who's a Korean New Zealander. But the Koreans are also dominating the latest European tour as Yoo So-yeon took home a trophy over the weekend. Now, world number 2 Park In-bi would take the lead after the 2 days of the event during the World Ladies Championship, but would have to settle with a second-place finish as Yoo So-yeon storms through in the final 2 days of the event, finishing off at 13 under par overall and beating Park In-bi by a single stroke. Now, still very early in the season, but the Koreans continue to dominate the 2015 season. Now, manager Uli Stilicke of the Korean national football team has made it clear that he's going to find more talent in the domestic league. And he wasn't kidding, as he's been seen visiting a couple of K-League Classic matches over the weekend. Now, with this interpreter on his side, the 61-year-old head coach was first seen at the Suwon Incheon match on Saturday, as he kept a close eye on some of the players who he hopes to add onto the new roster. But the very next day, he would travel to Pohang, where he watched the 6-goal affair between the Pohang Steelers and the Ulsan Hyundai Tigers, asking that he gets as little attention as possible while he's watching the matches. Now, with the March friendly set to take place at the end of the month, he's expected to continue his trips around the nation to watch the domestic talents. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Simon O, and that, of course, means it's time for Viral Feed. Now, it's never easy getting started on Mondays, but if you haven't had your morning cup of joe yet, I have the next best thing, a lineup of super incredible stories. It's going to get you off to a happy start to the week. Now, let's move right into our first story, because it is a fascinating one. I'm going to ask you a question to start us off. How long do you think it takes to build a skyscraper? Well, over in China, the answer is apparently just 19 days. How tall is it? Let's have a look. Now, this skyscraper in Hunan, China is 57 stories high. Pretty impressively large, but that's not what makes it so amazing. What is amazing is that it was built in just 19 days. I'm gonna say that again, a skyscraper 57 stories tall, 19 days. That's 3 stories going up every single day. And the secret behind the speed is that they use cement blocks built off-site and stack them, assemble them like a children's building block set. As you can see, that construction went on day and night. The building houses 800 apartments and office space for 4,000 people. And get this, the technique not only brought down the construction time, but it also reduced the amount of cement used by 15,000 tons. So I can only hope that with all that speed, it remains safe, but that speed is incredible. That's I think, on the corner of everyone's minds. Just it's fast, it's efficient, but How safe is it, and will it stand the test of time?
Well, get this. When the Empire State Building first went up, it went up at the rate of 5.5 stories per week. Not quite as quick as this, but still pretty fast. And as we all know, it's standing tall today, so hopefully this will be just as safe. That said, though, the other month, in February, I actually did a 500-piece puzzle, and that took me 3 weeks, which is a little bit longer.
You should not be building buildings or anything.
This is not something that I think I'd be very good at, speed skyscrapers.
You're going to need 19 years, more like.
Well,
19 years at least.
It looks like the only thing that's not fast is, the only thing that's... everything's speedy these days, including the internet. That's what I was trying to say.
Everything. I don't know if I can keep up with this pace. I feel like an old man. Now, get this. You're not going to believe this, but way back when I was about yay high, I actually used to be quite a talented singer. And then my voice dropped and everything just didn't work out after that. That said, though, I do know how difficult it is to stand up on a stage and sing for an audience. So that amazes me. The videos we're about to watch feature some young ladies who make it look like a walk through the park. Let's have a look. Now, this 7-year-old guest on a Norwegian TV show is named Angelina. Have a listen to her cover of Fly Me to the Moon.
Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, you are all in love, for all I worship and adore.
Such a beautiful voice.
7 years old.
I mean, I don't know when her debut single is going to drop, but I'm totally going to get it. Isn't that an incredible voice?
And she knows how to express the emotion of the song.
She reminds me of a young Carla
too.
Bruni. Such a wonderful voice. That's it, though. That sort of vocal talent we also see here in Korea. This is Kim Do-yeon at just 7 years old when she made this audition tape. Have a listen. Wait for the climax.
Adorable.
I mean, with all that practice that she clearly puts in, I'm guessing her neighbors aren't quite as enthusiastic. That's it, though. That's pretty great. Now, this is Park Ye-eum, another 9-year-old here in Korea. She likewise gave a jaw-dropping audition performance. Here's her take on My Own from Les Mis. Gives me goosebumps. How do they do that at such a young age? I can't even imagine.
You know, some kids just know exactly what they want to do when they're very young.
It's just unbelievable. I hope that one day, if I do have any children, I will have a daughter as vocally talented as this.
That's not easy to come by, you know. We have daughters. I don't think my daughter sings anything like that. How about Irene?
Nothing close.
This is pretty extraordinary, I suppose. But that said, just the amount of talent that you can find online nowadays, it's just pretty incredible. Okay, let's move on to our next story here. This is also a good one. We see a lot of very talented young athletes here in Korea. In fact, SJ makes a living talking about them every morning, right? But here's the thing. The people that we're about to see now, they are athletes, but they're going to show us some talents that they don't necessarily get to show in whatever sport they happen to play. I know that sounds a little confusing, but have a look. This is pretty incredible. Now have a look at how easily this guy jumps onto this enormous stack of weights. You ready for it?
No. Oh my.
Piece of
Just
cake.
in one, look at that. And he's not the only one either. If you have a look at this, his buddies also are able to do it.
He's shorter too.
Wow.
There's no run up to it even. Just from a standing start, they're able to do this. That stack is easily as tall as his shoulders. Watch this. Again, no run up.
Wow.
Bam.
Wow.
Not track and field
gravity
athletes.
there.
Human fleet.
They're actually weightlifters who are able to do that. Unbelievable. Now, if you're not familiar with sepak takraw, it's a sort of like volleyball game that you play with your feet. Look at that talent.
What just happened?
Wow.
I mean, even watching the video, I can scarcely believe that they're able to be that good. Look at this. A scissor kick that will put Jackie Chan to shame. And again, right on target. And finally, these are two Korean athletes in the slalom category of inline skating. And have a look at this. I mean, I can barely wrap my mind around what it is they're doing, let alone imagine myself even trying something similar. I mean, you see a video like this, you know, the thought that came to my mind when I first saw this video is, those people must be made out of liquid. They cannot be solid and do that with their legs. They must be some sort of alien liquid.
Yeah, I've noticed that you have a tendency to want to compete with these people on these amazing videos. Just give it up. You know, these people.
You sound exactly like my wife. I'll bring her over to the room and say, honey, look what we're doing on the show this week. This is incredible. Do you think I could do that with some practice? And she'll give me this look.
Well, you know what I think you can do? You can pretty much do what I can do. Get those barbell, the dumbbell plates or whatever, the weight plates, right? Maybe about 2 of them I think we can both do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to say maybe you can stack these for other people to jump on, but I think I'd get tired after about here. Yeah. This is where I would get too tired to go on any further. Something I will have to work on.
Well, practice makes perfect, right?
Alrighty, that's good. Now it's time for our final selection for this week. And I gotta say, of the 4 we have this week, it is my favorite. We've talked here on Viral Feed about some of the great ads we see in Korea. And this one is a doozy. It features a super impressive baby. And your mission is to try and guess what the ad is for. You ready? Let's have a look. Oh yes, check it out. It is EXO Baby. Tumble down the steps, brushes it right off. Threatening dogs, not so threatening in this EXO suit.
He'll do whatever he has to do.
Whatever he has to. I love the super impressive dramatic voiceover as well. Look at this bionics. I mentioned before that I'm a big fan of Iron Man, and maybe that's why this appeals to me. The only thing that can sort of threaten Super Baby here is Mom, who decides it's time for a bath.
Bath evade.
There's enough boost in this suit to get the baby away safely. I wonder if they have anything like that in my size, though. I would like a suit like that. Dodges dogs, dodges moms. What is this ad for? Any clue?
Baby formula.
Baby formula? It's
Formula,
a good guess,
vitamins.
but here's a hint. You might notice a familiar logo in this image here.
Oh, let's be honest.
This is actually
in the suit
an ad for a Korean automaker. See how seamlessly they transition? The idea is that their cars are so comfortable and so safe, and they pamper you so well that you're going to feel like a baby in an exosuit. When you need to run, you can run, and when you need to be comfy, you can be comfy and safe.
Okay.
Although, that said, I'm not sure if the ad completely worked for its original purpose, because after watching this, I think, I want one of these suits. It doesn't make me think I want one of those cars, right? That's it, though. It is pretty impressive. Alrighty, you guys, I hope you had fun. That's it for me this week with Viral Feed, but don't worry, I'll see you next time for more.
So as the current temperatures would reflect, it is spring, and when springtime comes, it's time for the springtime greens or the springtime veggies. In Korea, we have what's called namul, and we're going to find out more about that on #CuriousInKorea. And joining us is Megan Bowen to talk about more.
Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, guys. Nice to see you again. So, as we know, we're going to talk about the spring vegetables, but one of the things I noticed when I first came to Korea was that there are so many types of vegetables around. And so when I'm eating with my Korean friends, I'm like, what's this? What's that? Like, they're like, I don't know. I just eat it. Like, I know what it is. And so that was one of the things that, really interested me about Korean culture is the variety of vegetables that you guys seem to eat. So I went out and did a report for you guys on namul, which are the greens. So let's take a look. Korean meals typically consist of a bowl of rice with side dishes called banchan. And among these, the popularity of namul is enormous. The term encompasses so many different types of plants that of the 4,000 species of plants in Korea, a whopping 1,000 are considered edible or even medicinal.
1,000?
Yes, so many. And namul was probably eaten even before human beings discovered agriculture. Combined with the difficulties in farming, depending on the season, and the Buddhist rules, which regulate against killing any living creature, namul became a very central part of the food culture in Korea, and actually there are various different forms of it.
It came from the, oh, what is that? Let's pick it and eat it.
Yeah.
Oh, it tastes nice.
Right now, vegetables like nengi or shepherd's purse and sumbagi, a type of lettuce, are especially popular. The namul in the spring are very healthy due to the nutrients they've stored up over the winter.
I buy namul because my appetite has decreased and I long for new flavors, something fresh and fragrant.
They are different than in the winter, more fresh.
In addition to the traditional preparations, there are various fusion namul dishes popping up, even in high-end restaurants. And even just watching these pictures makes my taste buds water. 봄나물, which are the spring seasonal namul greens, are just now becoming available. So it's not hard to find women gathering wild edible greens in the fields and mountains across Korea. Namul can be categorized into mountain, which are my favorite ones, so delicious, field, or farmed namul, depending on where it's harvested from. They're especially delicious cooked in the Korean way of emphasizing their flavors without excessive seasoning. So, restaurants specializing in various types of namul dishes at reasonable prices have become common recently. They're popular among office workers who need to eat many of their meals away from home, so it's a really good way for them to have healthy vegetables away from home.
It's tasty. It makes me feel healthier.
Eating namul makes me feel reinvigorated.
I eat namul all the time, but it tastes especially good in the springtime.
After eating stored namul and kimchi all winter, people feel tired in the spring, so this sort of dish is appetizing. That's why so many people come here.
In the springtime, the body loosens up from the winter cold, leading to drowsiness. It's often a time for new environments, be it school or work. That stress can weaken the immune system. Namul can be recommended then, as it warms the body and boosts the immune system.
So, how exactly is namul gathered? I went to try for myself. 안녕하세요.
네, 어머 안녕하세요.
지금 뭐 하고 계세요?
냉 캐고 있죠. 한번 해볼래요?
네. One of my favorite Korean dishes is seasoned nengi namul or shepherd's purse, but even so, it was tough for me to recognize it.
그럼 풀. 냉이 아니?
이건 냉이 아니에요.
냉이 아님? 냉이 아니.
This is not nengi.
Yeah, that's tough to throw out.
It just looks like there's a lot of dirt, but there's namuru that's planted in there.
Yeah. So actually, nengi season is early spring, so at this time now. But soon the fibers become very tough, and the texture won't be as palatable. So it becomes inedible. I picked all of these nengis.
They have an eye.
Smells
right,
good.
you have to be able to distinguish which is nengi and which is weed.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So now we're going to finally go and see how they prepare the vegetables and taste them. Sounds delicious. So the first step is you have to clean and trim the namul.
흙이 없어야 돼. 돌멩이, 애기 돌멩이가 있거나 그러면 안 돼.
And a tip that I picked up is the best nengi has relatively thin roots and the aroma is very strong. And then the freshly harvested greens are washed thoroughly because there's so much dirt you have to get off. And then they're cooked in boiling water. The most important part of this step is the timing. Nengi should only be cooked long enough to soften the chewy roots, no longer than about 5 minutes.
And if you overcook
오래
them,
삶으면 요거 햇냉이 요거 있지? 요 햇냉이가 너무 확 삶아져. 많이 삶아져. 그래서 맛이 없어져.
Then all that's left is the light seasoning using soy sauce, gochujang, sugar, minced garlic, sesame, and scallions. So delicious.
You guys look like a mother-in-law and sister-in-law kind of relationship.
did you find a husband there?
good.
Not too many other seasonings and flavors. Just a little spicy, just a little hint of like the oily flavor, but then the nengi is so good and fresh. So finally, it's time to dig in. Just look at all the variety, all the various types of vegetables that are there. It's so amazing. But out of all the dishes, the star is the seasoned 냉이 나물. So good.
You had dinner or
So
lunch
today
with the whole
we got to see exactly how you grow and pick the 냉이. So it actually makes eating it a lot better since we worked so hard and now we can eat the delicious 냉이. So as I munched away happily on spring namul, I realized they're not only delicious but also very nutritious as well.
Namul dishes contain large amounts of vitamin A and C as well as minerals like calcium and iron. They also have strong anti-inflammatory properties. Various types of spring namul help prevent cancer, considered by some to be 1,000 times more effective than conventional cancer medication.
And here they are, and I am famished. I have been waiting for this moment all day. Where's my rice?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I
this
wish
is
we could almost share with the viewers the fragrance.
I know, the smell,
Very interesting.
It's very, very
Look at that.
fragrant.
This
And
is-
that's, huh?
This
Do you
is-
know all the names of them?
Well, I know this. Soup.
What is it?
This
Soup.
is actually very common. You can actually find this just alongside the road, and you see some people go up to the mountains and just pick them
Right.
and take them home. Just go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, eat it. But one of the things about 봄 나물 is that they're very fragrant and aromatic. So that was one of the things that I noticed and enjoy about it. You walk through the market and it's just fresh spring smells. So what about the other ones? Do you know what they are?
This is, I believe, soup 버무리, right? And this
is this salt
very
or-
interesting.
No,
this
it's
is
almost like
rice.
rice cake.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Kind
Tell
of
us
a
about
rice
this.
cake. So that's just, you take the soup and then you add it with the rice flour and you just steam it a bit and it makes a very delicious spring snack. It's very refreshing, right?
Wow. It's like talk.
Yeah.
But you can smell the soup.
The soup is what makes it, man. The fresh springness. And then here we have 불나무. And of course,
also the 된장국, the
That's right.
fermented soybean soup. We usually have all those namul in the 된장국 during this time of the year because it gives that more fragrant and fresh
Right.
taste to it. I love it.
Especially 냉이.
Right, 냉이 and
냉이.
달래, probably.
달래 could be a little bitter in the end, the end
Right.
taste,
Right.
but it's still beautiful in your mouth and it's really full in your mouth, that
Yes.
scent and that fragrance, right?
It is very fragrant.
You know, the
and
sense I get just by looking at this and getting a whiff of the scent
Right.
is that you're not going to gain weight from this.
That's right. And
This
that's
is very,
one.
very
Go
healthy
ahead,
food,
dig
right?
in.
You can eat every vegetable you want. That's why I love them so much. Especially, I like the mountain variety type of vegetables. They're my favorite ones. So I'm always like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that this is prevalent in Western culture? Because we normally don't see this in the average garden
Right.
salad, right?
Right, you don't usually see that. I think that in terms of the amount of vegetables that we eat, in Korea, there's over 1,000, what was it, types of edible greens that are eaten in Korea. And I noticed, if we were to see this, like on the street, we might just think it was, some type of weed.
Look at all
We didn't
that.
really experiment,
Yeah, you have to
with
know what
eating
you're
the
looking
vegetables.
for, right?
Right.
So I think the amount of vegetables and types of greens that we eat are very limited, and usually ones that you don't cook, like lettuce. If you can't really cook it, it will wilt. So, yeah.
It looks like tiny ginseng if you think about it, right? With the roots and
I love
everything. But something that looks like this cannot be bad for you, I
Right,
say.
it's really healthy.
But I'm amazed that you like it because, you would think it's an acquired taste, the
Right.
whole namul. But as a foreigner, you seem
Right.
to,
I do enjoy it. I usually don't really eat meats that much. So that was one of the things that attracted me to Korea in the first place was seeing pictures online of all the banchan, which are the Korean side dishes, usually being made up of vegetables. And as we said earlier, you can eat as much as you want and not gain weight. It's healthy, you gain energy, and you don't feel tired after you eat it.
And because of the health benefits of namul, there are programs like namul diet or namul food therapy
Right.
even. And low sodium recipes for these namul dishes are getting a lot of attention these days.
Right, and there's also, actually, I have a friend, and I've been following her on SNS, and she actually started a program where you can get, fresh namul delivered to you. And so I check all the time and see what things she got delivered to her, and so I'm probably going to start using that service, home delivery.
And it's all prepared, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you don't have to do anything.
And
with
I'm
it.
nibbling on this without any seasoning, and it's quite good.
Really
You wanna try it?
good.
I think this may be a new future in diet for Minjung.
That's
Sure. Wow, thank you so much, Megan. That was really helpful. I think we learned a lot, especially Suk pomori. That's so interesting. Thank you so
Megan.
much.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
All right. Well, this is where we say goodbye on this Monday morning.
Okay, it's going to be a pretty comfortable one today, so excuse me, fun out there. And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning exactly at 7 a.m.
Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.